In a hole in the ground there lived a hobbit. Not a nasty, dirty, wet hole, filled with the ends of worms and an oozy smell, nor yet a dry, bare, sandy hole with nothing in it to sit down on or to eat. It was a hobbit hole, and that means comfort. For many of us, these words marked the beginning of an immersion into an incredible world, where a small hero, in every sense of the word, managed to influence events far greater than himself. There is little point in recounting the details of Bilbo Baggins' journey there, just as there is no need to retell his path back. We do not wish to narrate how he vanquished dragons, rescued fair maidens, and liberated kingdoms, especially since, strictly speaking, he did none of that. However, today we will explore how the appearance of this character was created and why he is far more complex than he may originally seem. Most importantly, we will show you how he can be recreated with historical accuracy, at least as much as it is possible for a work in the fantasy genre. We will draw parallels to the real historical elements of clothing and bring all of this to life. Welcome to the Fable fabric, and let's begin. So where did the appearance of hobbits come from? To some extent, Tolkien associated hobbits with the inhabitants of rural England. Here is an excerpt from his letter to Rayna Unwin dated July 3rd, 1956. The Shire is based on rural England and no other country in the world, least of all Holland, which is topographically entirely different. The toponymy of the Shire is a parody of that of rural England, much in the same sense as its inhabitants. In another letter to Charlotte and Denise Plimmer, Tolkien noted that the Shire and Rivendell were located at the latitude of Oxford. Accordingly, hobbits bore a resemblance to English farmers. In another letter to Charlotte and Dennis Plimmer, Tolkien notes that the Shire and Rivendell are located at the latitude of Oxford. Accordingly, hobbits bear a resemblance to English farmers. British rural attire is not quite the folk costume in the European sense, as due to historical reasons, common folk, including peasants, wore clothing that hardly differed from that of the upper classes. Nevertheless, English peasants, farmers, and fishermen developed a unique style that was adopted by gentlemen in the mid-19th century, adapted to a higher style. Returning to the descriptions in the original work, Tolkien himself admits that this was not his strongest suit. I don't know details about clothing. I can picture very clearly and in all detail the landscapes and natural objects, but not artifacts, except that men, especially in northern regions like the Shire, wore trousers either under a cloak or long coat or simply in combination with a tunic. Thus, we can confidently say that the external appearance of hobbits was largely crafted by another equally important author for this saga, Peter Jackson, director of The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit trilogies, along with his team at Weta, demonstrated incredible diligence in creating the unique style of hobbits, achieving authenticity and fidelity to J.R.R. Tolkien's descriptions. This process encompassed every detail, from costumes and sets to makeup, actors, and even their way of life. Jackson and his team meticulously studied Tolkien's works, where hobbits are portrayed as simple, peaceful beings leading a secluded rural existence. They cherish food, nature, and the comfort of home, steering clear of any adventures. The hobbits' costumes were designed with their modest and pastoral lifestyle in mind. Natural fabrics like linen and wool were chosen, giving their clothing a worn and unpretentious appearance. It's also worth noting that the cut of the garments was kept deliberately loose to allow for ease of movement during work. The color palette of their outfits featured soft, warm tones, browns, greens, and beiges, evoking a deep connection with the natural world. Each hobbit was assigned a unique style of dress that reflected their personality. For instance, Bilbo Baggins sported more refined and elegant attire befitting his status and character. When discussing the character of this particular hobbit, namely Bilbo Baggins, it's fair to say he was quite a prosperous representative of his kind. It is often mentioned that Bilbo bore a strong resemblance to his father, who was calm, respectable, and practical, a figure held in high regard by other hobbits. However, he inherited from his mother a hidden propensity for adventure, which would occasionally awaken within him. It is said that Bilbo possessed both a Baggins side and a Took side to his character, the former paternal, respectable, conservative, resistant to novelty and any form of disruption, the latter maternal, active, adventurous, and poetic. It is not hard to discern which side ultimately triumphed and led to his wanderings. But let us return to the clothing. We will begin with the shirt. In Tolkien's text, it is striking how there are no mentions of shirts among hobbits. However, it is important to note that the word shirt has its roots in Old English and originally referred to a skirt or tunic. Thus, we can infer that it pertains to a tunic rather than our modern conception of a shirt. What distinguishes a tunic from a shirt as we understand it today? Primarily, it is the length. Standardized clothing sizes only emerged during the time of the Civil War, and prior to that, garments were tailored exclusively by eye, often in a single size. Moreover, during those times, belts and suspenders were not commonly used. Thus, a long tunic was better suited to be tucked into trousers. Interestingly, a white tunic was considered a mark of high status, since it was often used as undergarment. Not everyone could afford to wear a clean, light-colored tunic. The simplicity of its construction also explains the absence of collars on tunics. Let's move on to the creation of a silk scarf. First of all, the master uses a special frame to turn the fabric into a canvas. After that, they create the initial markings and patterns. The master uses a special solution to create the outline. This solution will stop the paint from penetrating the fabric in areas that should remain uncolored. After this, color selection takes place. The paint is specially diluted with a liquid to ensure even distribution on the silk. For such work, simple natural materials have been used for many years, such as wax, ochre, and charcoal. Yes, modern patterns can be stricter and more complex, but it is impossible to replicate a design created by a human. During his famous journey there and back again, Bilbo Baggins wore a vest adorned with copper buttons, which he lost in Gollum's cave. Perhaps the same embroidered silk vest was donned by him at the farewell feast before his departure from the Shire. The vest has an interesting history of its own. Its predecessor was the doublet, but unlike its forerunner, the vest lost its length and strictness, along with some buttons, becoming a more comfortable and casual wardrobe item. It's intriguing to note that the vest has an official birth date on October 7th, 1666. King Charles II of England issued a decree introducing a new fashion, the vest. Samuel Pepys recorded in his diary, "Yesterday a decree was issued regarding a new fashion. It will be a vest, nothing more is known for now." Although the precise details remain unclear, it is known that the English proclaimed the vest as their invention, despite similar garments existing at the court of the Persian Shah Abbas. English aristocrats began to wear vests actively after the king's decree, and since then, this clothing item has become an integral part of English attire. In addition to embroidered vests, hobbits also possess coats with pockets that play an important role in their wardrobes. For instance, Pippin retrieves a pipe for Gimli from his pocket in the book, as well as handkerchiefs, for example. Perhaps this is why Bilbo felt such distress when he left home without a handkerchief. What can be said about hobbit coats, aside from their abundance of pockets? No matter how versatile this piece of clothing may be, there are still some distinctions to note. There are coats with a military pass strict, straight and single-breasted. Double-breasted coats, on the other hand, have their origins with sailors. However, what we see in the films is more aligned with the cut of European and English coats specifically, cover coats designed for hunting and everyday wear. Now, let's briefly touch upon the Hobbit's short trousers, known as breeches. The term breeches dates back to the 13th century and derives from the Old English word brec, which literally translates to clothing for the legs and torso. One could weave a long and intricate tale about how breeches are connected to modern trousers, polo players from India, and the French Revolution, but in essence, three key facts stand out. Breeches are a part of the classic European suit. The length of the breeches worn by common folk is dictated by the simplicity of their construction and the fact that they require no tailoring. And finally, breeches are perfectly suited to highlight the anatomical features of hobbits, who eschew shoes in favor of the strength and agility of their bare feet. What could be simpler than a staff? But even here, the authors of The Hobbit used this accessory to emphasize several important things. It serves both as a traveler's attribute and as a reflection of the Hobbit's peaceful nature. Therefore, without it, our set would not be complete.
By or sustained as a consequence thereof, including but not limited to lacerations, evisceration, incineration,
an adventure. Now, I don't imagine anyone west of Bree would have much interest in adventures.
It's not that I don't like visitors. I like visitors as much as the next Hobbit. But I do like to know them before they come visiting.
To have some skill that conquers, if you must know. But I fail to see why that's relevant.
I'm going on an adventure!